everyone. Have you been working on your 17 Bible period song with actions? I hope so. We'll sing it again together here in just a little bit, but first I want to add a new activity to our time together. I'm going to name some Bible events, and I want you to tell me whether they took place in the Old or the New Testament. And then we're going to see if we can put each of those events within one of our Bible periods. The Bible is just one continuous story of God's love for us and His expectations for us. We are to be holy as He is holy, and the Bible teaches us how to do that. It teaches us that God has a plan for our salvation if we obey Him and do as He has said. Doesn't it just make sense that we should know as much about the Bible as possible so we can be sure to learn the things God had intended for us to learn? Well, absolutely. So let me turn my camera and we'll get started. I want to turn it so you can see the Bible periods a little better. And we'll begin with our events, and you help me by putting on your thinking caps, and let's begin. The Israelites crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. Was that in the Old or the New Testament? The Old Testament. Good job. And which Bible period does that event fit in? The Exodus. Okay. How about when David killed Goliath and Saul became so jealous that he wanted to kill David? Is that in the Old or the New Testament? Old Testament. Good. And what Bible period does it fit in? Maybe I can give you a clue. Saul was a king, a tall king, wasn't he? So he fits into the United Kingdom. We had 3 kings in this time period. Saul, then David, then Solomon. It's just 3 of them in the United Kingdom. How about Lazarus when he was raised from the dead? Is that Old or New Testament? New Testament. Good. And who raised him from the dead? Jesus. So which Bible period do we look at for this one? The life of Christ. How about when animals were gathered into a very large boat? Is that Old or New Testament? That was Old, and it was the time of the flood. How about a young man named Daniel being taken to Babylon? We follow Daniel's life from when he's a young man to when he's quite old. But he was taken, maybe that's a clue, to Babylon. Is that Old or New Testament? Old Testament. And what time period would that be? The captivity. All right. How about when the people couldn't understand each other any longer because God confused their language? Was that Old or the New Testament? Old Testament. Good. And what time period? Scattering of the people. They couldn't understand each other any longer, so they started moving apart from one another. Up until then, they all lived in the same area. How about when Saul becomes Paul? Remember, Saul is a great persecutor of the church, and then he is changed. Not only is his name changed, but his whole life changed. Is that Old or New Testament? That's new. And what time period does it belong in? The early church. Paul became an apostle and a preacher during the time of the early church. How about when 12 men were chosen by Jesus to help him teach others? Old or New Testament? That's a new, isn't it? And what time period? Who chose them? Jesus. So it was during the life of Christ, during his ministry. How about when the walls of Jericho fell down after the army of Israel had marched around them 7 days? Old or New Testament? Old Testament. And what time period would that be? Gotta find it here. The invasion and conquest. They were going into the promised land. Finally, it was time. Now, there was some things they had to do. God wasn't just going to give them the land, was he? They had to follow him in faith. That means they had to do things to prove their faith. When they had faith, they won every battle. When they failed to have faith and follow God's command, they would lose the battle. There's a lesson in there for us. How about when 12 spies were sent into Canaan to look around this promised land they were going to get? Was that Old or the New Testament? Old. Okay, and what time period does that belong in? They hadn't entered the promised land yet, so they were living in the wilderness still, outside of the promised land, wandering in the wilderness. How about when Cain kills his brother out of jealousy? Old or new? Way old. That's our first time period, isn't it? Before the flood even happened, that took place. How about when Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem? Old or New Testament? Old Testament. Good. And what time period was that in? It followed their captivity, so it's when they returned from captivity he rebuilt the walls. How about when some apostles and other men wrote some inspired words down for the Christians? Old or New Testament? New Testament. And what time period? The letters to the Christians. The books that they wrote are still in our Bible for us to read today. How about when 12 brothers threw their brother into a pit? Was that the Old or the New Testament? That's the Old Testament. And what time period? Joseph was one of the patriarchs. Okay, that's all we're going to do today. How did you do? Were you able to name Old and New Testament pretty easily? How about when it came to placing the events in our time periods? Did you do all right? You know, you can watch the video again and learn those events and learn which time period they went in if you had a little trouble with any of them. But you know what? Before we go, let's go ahead and sing our song together again. Let me turn the camera so we can do our actions together. You ready? Before the flood and then the flood, scattering of the people, patriarchs, exodus, wandering in the wilderness, invasion and conquest of the land, judges then united kingdom, divided kingdom, Judah alone, then captivity, return from captivity, years of silence, life of Christ, early church, then the letters to the Christians, Hey, very good. I think you've been working on it. Keep working on it, and I'll be back with more events for us to put into our time periods, okay? Y'all be good. Miss you. Bye-bye.